Excellent. Okay, great. So I suppose everyone here today is curious about this curious solo by Michel Blavet, this Gigue en Rondeau in E minor. It's in his first book of the Recueil de Pièces, which is a collection of solos and duets arranged from popular opera melodies of the time, airs, as well as other famous pieces in his time, and of course as well as his own themes and arrangements of his own compositions. There are 3 books, and I highly recommend this collection. If you don't own it already, it contains really a wealth of repertoire for us flutists, whether you're a Baroque flutist or a modern flutist wanting to get a taste of the French Baroque style. This is really a great thing to have. And also whether for practicing specific techniques or actually programming this into a concert, as I have done with the Gigue en Rondeau. And I'll say that this piece really catches people's attention, and I often get the feedback that people think that it's a modern piece, and they don't expect it that it's from the Baroque time at all. Okay, so what makes this piece so unique? Now, it's called a gigue, which obviously refers to a dance, but it's not really something to dance to. Let's compare with this Gigue en Rondeau by Jean-Philippe Rameau. I'll just kind of play it casually for you guys to get a sense for the melody. So you see here how there are much more typical gigue rhythms, so such as the dotted yum ba da bum, or the quarter with the 8 dum bum 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 bum, and these figures actually help establish a much stronger feel of a dance. And we know that from Blavet's music, we basically have all these continuous eighth notes, right? And so it feels much less dance-like and very horizontal. And in addition, the phrasings, you know, the slurring over whole groups, triplets, these, instead of the more usual 2 + 1, ti ta ta ta, yeah. These are also atypical characteristics of a gigue, and again, taking away that rhythmic feel of a dance. So I would say that this piece seems to be more about taking certain qualities from a gigue, but less of an actual dance movement. And just in case if some of you are unfamiliar with the terms, Rondeau refers to the structure of the music and means that there's this theme that comes back repeatedly. Okay, so talking about the patterns, all the triplets have the same pattern, which is made up of a leap plus a step. And they come in all sorts of permutations. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, sometimes they go really down and then make a long stretch back up again. But it's overall really quite minimalistic. You know, Blavet is setting very specific parameters for this composition. So the key for us as flute players is to be able to shape our sound and focus on the changes of sound color along with the harmony. So the sound and harmonies drive this music forward, and that's what's going to bring movement to this piece. We want to absolutely avoid having this sound like an endless string of notes, which can easily happen as that's how it looks like on the page, right? So again, really think in harmonies, in groups, in phrases. In the opening, which is the Rondeau theme, and this is important because of the repetition. The main structure of the phrase is using half steps. You know, I mark here the chromatic line here going down. There's also the half step emphasis in these repeated B and C intervals. And, you know, I would say this is kind of a big deal in Baroque music. And the fact that it happens right at the beginning of a piece where we normally would have a clear sense of the tonal center, the home keys, right? The beginning is about establishing the tonal center of the piece. So as it's written, it feels like it's kind of just floating in from nowhere, and we never really get a clear outline of an E minor chord. And music theorists have had different opinions about the relationship between affect and intervals, and whether specific intervals refer to a specific affect or emotion. I think nonetheless, we can refer to a statement by Johann Mattheson. He talks about feelings or affect as expansions and contractions, and that, quote here, sadness is a contraction of the subtle parts of our body, so the small and smallest intervals are most suitable for this passion. So it is a general observation to be made that often joyful pieces will have leaps, and more lyrical and introvert pieces are made up of notes in stepwise motion. The first 4 bars, let's look at even just the first measure here. We also see the outlining of a minor 6. Excuse me. So the outlining of a minor 6, both as the ambitus, so the range of a triplet, as well as the interval as itself. And you know, the minor 6 continues for the next couple of bars. So the half steps combined with the minor 6 intervals right at the start, these are the striking elements which are responsible for setting the tone of the piece. Next time you hear a piece of music which features a minor 6 prominently, think about whether it might recall for you kind of a feeling of melancholy. I always have to think about the C-sharp minor waltz by Frédéric Chopin. It's from his Opus 64 collection. Find it on YouTube. It's one of his famous waltzes, and I think you'll recognize what I'm talking about. So what are some technical issues to consider when playing this piece? If you agree with everything that I just said, and with all the rhythmic and melodic characteristics I just mentioned, we want to diverge from playing it like a typical gigue dance, and here's how. So we want to use an airstream that shows the little shapes of each slur, but also the longer line. We'll want to avoid clipping the slurs as we might like to do in a dance rhythm. Gently diminuendo each time through the slur, but still leave just a hair, a wisp of air in between these slur groups. And if you think about, if you can like be in touch with your air, have the air stay kind of up. Yeah, really feel it between the lips, feel it in your face somehow, and don't let it drop down. And we can practice this by playing each triplet separately and slightly linger on the last note before going on to the next one. So I pre-recorded some of these examples because these things are very subtle details to work on, so I want to make sure that the audio quality is good enough to show these subtleties. Okay, so this is how I would first go about practicing doing the small shapes as well as showing the longer line. actually, if you have your flute with you, you can go ahead and try that. And I'll just kind of give you some more tips as you try that. Be sure also to raise the back of the mouth, so that's part of the staying up feeling. Raise the back of the mouth, open your nose, the lips slightly forward to be able to do those nice nuances, but also keep it open. So we don't want to clamp down. It should just slightly forward and open at the same time. And again, feel the sound around your nose and around your forehead. This range is also actually perfect on the Baroque flute, especially also because of the high C natural. So the high C natural is a slightly sharp note, which means that we can actually do a very comfortable diminuendo on that. And again, remember to use slow air and see if you also need to reduce your air as well. Okay, so just give it a moment and try that out. Okay, let's continue for now. Like I said, this will be on YouTube, and you can always come back to it and practice along that way. So now, if we would reduce that gap, but still have the continuity of the air, it would sound something like this. Okay, now here comes something very interesting. Let's compare that with a more dance-like phrasing, which would involve clipping those slurs and making a sound more vertical. So here we go. Okay, so actually, this was very interesting for me as well to hear these versions back to back. I think the last version that you just heard now, so strictly spoken, the tempo is maybe a hair faster, but really not by much. But it actually sounds a lot faster just simply through that change in articulation. So try this comparison when you're practicing this piece, and of course you'll have to decide which one you'd prefer, but I personally feel that the more vertical dance-like playing does less justice for that mysterious, melancholy kind of sliding motif that Blavet has set up from the beginning. Now, in connection with that idea, think of the second triplet in the measure as just slightly lighter to create that long line. So think of it almost like an echo, but do it very subtly. Also beware, once again, the moving notes underneath. Continues also in other passages. Ideally, we'll want to reduce the whole piece to just these bottom notes. And so as we're playing, we let these notes guide us forward, and the high notes just kind of float along in the background. Because of its higher range and also the repetition, the high notes will already have enough presence, and we have to get our technique to a place where the individual notes do not get more attention than necessary. So again, it's the effect of the overall pattern and implied harmonies that create the essence of this piece. And if we have this mindset while playing, we can create for the listener really wonderful sound colors and not just a bunch of notes flying by. So it's all about managing our air across notes and beyond notes. Oh, there we go. We'll talk a little about dynamics. Now, we can actually just follow these. Oh, I think, not sure. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. It's my own screen here. Okay. You're seeing everything, yeah? The crescendo and decrescendo words. Yeah, okay. Great. We can just follow these very classic and simple guidelines in terms of dynamics and melodic direction. So when you're going up, try doing a crescendo, and when you're going down, doing a decrescendo. And of course, there are going to be exceptions, but actually these rules work quite well for a lot of the time. We sometimes have these very long build-ups from the low to the high register. Watch out that how you manage your breath and distribute your sound very consciously. So try to refrain from just playing loud because it's the start of a phrase. So create that feeling of, you know, really exciting piano or pianissimo, which will lead your audience to enjoy how the line ascends or descends. You know, or we're going in a diminuendo, you know, really feel that kind of descent into the darkness, if you would, and just simply resist from giving it all away at once. You know, don't give it all away too fast. We want to really create and hold on to the suspension. So I've got these sections marked with the stars. If you want to try some of these just right now, shortly, go ahead and do them. And the idea is look ahead to where you're going and see how you work your dynamics to arrive to specific points in the phrase. Okay, so I can take a moment and try that. Okay, again, feel free to come back to it at another time. Of course, with everything, practice slowly to first get that breath management, resonance, and embouchure coordinated. And just really kind of observe internally how you navigate the air to create shapes. And this is much more important than speed. Yeah, so creating the shapes and the dynamics, the nuances is going to be far more important than speed in this piece. Yeah, I think for everything. Okay, but that's just my own opinion. Okay, we'll get to questions. I just want to go through this part first. I want to throw out a couple more ideas at you. Rubato. Here are the main sections of the piece marked with subsections kind of marked in brackets. We can certainly add rubato as we transition between sections, and there's so many ways to do them. You know, we can slow down as we end a phrase, we can start a phrase slower and then kind of speed up and gain momentum. We can do one or the other, we can do both. There are also different proportions of how and where to slow down and get back into tempo again. So there are a lot of variables we can play with, and the main thing is just to be careful to still preserve a sense of momentum. So if you think about this piece as a turning wheel, and the wheel can slow down sometimes, but then it has to take up speed again. Yeah? So it should feel organic, you know, elastic, and kind of always moving forward horizontally. And personally, I think less of the vertical motion. And you know, sometimes we can also just play basically straightforward and use other aspects of our sound to help us transition. Use dynamics, change your tone color. My former teacher, Wilbert Hazelzet, people who know me, I quote a lot from him, and because he's just got so many wonderful things to say, he talked a lot about using rubato in sound. And I think what he means is that besides just simply manipulating rhythm, use your sound to create contrast and flexibility. And the interesting thing is that manipulating or molding your sound will most likely result in a slight change in tempo, but because you'll be coming from a different approach, I think you'll find it to be a much more holistic and organic way to play. And of course, it's impossible to cover all instances. But if I can just give a general tip to everyone here in terms of how to handle, how to approach rubato and or interpretation in general, it's basically just, first of all, kind of feel the passage or feel the music and really kind of feel it emotionally. Observe your feelings and then try to understand why you feel this way by looking for clues in the music. And like some of these, what I mentioned about intervals or how the structure of the phrases go. So these are the clues in the music that we look for. And then we can experiment with how to convey those feelings through flute technique using all the tools that we have. And I believe finally that everyone's own discovery is essentially the fun in music. I'll point out one favorite moment of mine in connection with rubato. This is the third line here, again a minor 6 leap up to the C. Again, we have this wonderful interval. And this leap really makes the passage very touching because it's like, all of a sudden it breaks away from the previous sequence. And for me, it feels like, it's kind of like your heart kind of jumped all of a sudden. Yeah. So I wouldn't want to rush through that. I want the high C to shine through, or you can imagine it's like all of a sudden there's a break in the clouds and then light shines through the clouds, and which is actually what happens in my film, and I'll get into that in just a bit. So we want the listener to feel, really emotionally feel that leap, and that will take a bit of time to get the resonance and the gesture or the movement to come across as something special. But understand that my starting point is about the sound. So I'm talking about reaching a specific sound quality on that C, and really much less about the rhythm. Another great moment in this piece is the dominant trill here, right before the da capo. This is a big moment of suspension, as there's would have been this long build-up from the low E here. We go way beyond an octave, and then we have this octave leap back down, which is a very strong musical gesture rhetorically. This trill, this passage here, is a great example of affect in ornamentation, and how ornaments are not just kind of random twiddles, but ornaments also serve a purpose, an expressive purpose. So the turn here, or the tour de chant, this turn propels us forward, and it's a great way to crescendo into the trill. And I would suggest also doing a appoggiatura plus mordent, so a porte-voix plus a battement on this B natural to kind of further enhance that motion and tension. This place should feel like there's this kind of a big whirlwind of sound, and it should sound dramatic. Let's see if I can try to demonstrate that. It's just like, yeah, and then there's a suspense, and then the rondeau comes back again. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and try that, really feel that tension and this kind of whirlwind of energy through the trills and through the turn. Again, you should really feel it. So it's not just kind of twiddling your twiddling your fingers, but can you really feel the energy behind the trill and behind the turns? Okay, so these are basically some of my key takeaways about this piece. I'll actually end this section with my own question, which is sometimes I do wonder if this piece is really by Blavet, and it's just so different from any other piece that we have from him. In the same collection, there's this is the last piece from that collection, is written in a similar style. You can see it's also, kind of everything's very minimalistic. You have the same repeated patterns. It says it's from Blavet. But I personally feel that the Gigue on Rondeau is, for me, simply a much more evocative piece of music. And, that ambiguous opening is simply a stroke of genius. And despite basically simple compositional means, there's plenty of room left for the performer's interpretation and imagination to create something much complex out of it. But obviously, on the other hand, we don't have any proof otherwise. So, I'm not claiming anything here. There's just a question I thought to share with everyone. And maybe it was really a stroke of genius from him, and we're just blessed with this wonderful piece by him. Are there any quick questions now with regarding any of the stuff that I just talked about? We'll also have a question around afterwards in this kind of second part of my talk, but if I can answer any immediate questions, I'd be glad to do here. And I can't see all of you, so please unmute yourself and jump in.
Where do you get the 3 volumes of his music?
Oh, so yeah, on IMSLP, thank you, Susan, for that question. Yeah, so on IMSLP, there is only the first volume. Yeah, if you go on the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, they actually have the 3 volumes, and there is also it's an edition that took over the former Fuseau. Some of you know. Sorry, I'm not thinking the right one. Not Fuseau, but the Spes, the Italian edition with a lot of these facsimiles. So I actually have, this is a Spes edition. Some of you may recognize from the 80s, 90s or so. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist anymore, and the company Valhall has taken over some of the, I think all of the books, and you can get from Valhall then these 3 books as well.
Could you please spell the name of the publisher?
Yeah, I'll let me put it. I'll send an email to people then with a.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll remember to do that. Thanks.
Okay,
Susan.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, there'll be plenty of time afterwards. Then I'll just go ahead with the second part of this talk, which is talking about my creative process in the film with this music by Blavet. Should I play the film in its entirety? Has everyone seen the film on YouTube? Okay, I see some nodding heads saying no. Okay, I think we will have time to go through it. I just didn't want to make sure that we'd have enough time for discussion and questions as well. Okay, great. So I'll play the film here at the very at the end to summarize everything. Okay, so the story behind this film is that, first of all, I recorded this piece a while ago, and it just kind of sat in my archives. I felt like something was missing, and I didn't feel meaningful to just kind of release it as an audio track. So, and then I got into astrophotography. And while I was photographing in a dark sky region in Germany, I was often photographing somewhat cloudy nights. And those experiences, exactly in that moment, those experiences reminded me of this piece. It was almost like, the music just started to float into my head. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is it. Everything made sense now. So immediately, since then, I saw this connection for me between that ambiguous, mysterious feeling of Blavet's music and the night sky. So I started to collect footage which I thought would convey the adjectives I had for this music. So words like ethereal, mysterious, tender, perpetual. Here you see me photographing in the mist. I told you I'm photographing in the clouds, right? And actually I was really happy I was really thankful and happy to be in these weather conditions. And whereas for many other photographers, they would be packing up already because it would just be way too cloudy for them. Here you see some of my experiences in the Alps in Austria. And so you'll notice that in my film, there are many images with cloudy nightscapes, which is actually not quite common in astrophotography. But in combination with my concept about the music, I wanted to show how light emerges from the dark. And I was looking for a much more nuanced expression instead of the usual, clear night sky, Milky Way shots. And with a certain balance in the amount of light and the type of clouds, I really find that these views can be incredibly touching. So as my concepts evolved, I settled on the idea that for me, this piece is about seeing the light and trusting the light in dark times. So hence the title, Trusting Light. And that's also why we don't actually get a clear view of the night sky until the very end of the film. So in the film, you'll see night skies from Germany, Austria, and in northern Italy in the Dolomites. So you see all the markings there on the map. And it took me about 3 years before I felt like I had collected enough footage or a good selection of footage to create the film. And I also incorporated for the first time time-lapse footage. This shot with a fisheye lens, so that's why you see the distortion in the lens here that's round. And so this music has a constant turning gesture, right? I think that's where the kind of the Gigue rhythm is coming, is suggesting. And also the notes kind of keep circling around. And I just felt that for me, that just reminded me of the rotation of our globe. And of course, by using the fisheye lens here, it also gave that circularity in the visual sense. And the passage where I started to use time lapses is where there's this long string of development happening in the music, leading up to that dramatic cadence right before the da capo, that trill that we just practiced just now. Yeah, so obviously there are so many connections I could talk about between specific moments in the music and how I interpret it visually, but then we'd be here forever. But anyway, to summarize, one of the most important aspects for me is working with timing. I find transitions fascinating, and so you'll see a lot of visual emphasis on that, and I look at specific elements in the music and see how I can represent them in my imagery. So the music is my basis, and although I wasn't thinking about the night sky when I recorded this piece, remember this was done even earlier, I was thinking about those same adjectives. So, and that's how the connection came about. As an example, I like to show one of my favorite sections in the film. So after this very cloudy beginning, the first couplet kind of crescendos and the sequence moves higher. So for me, that's like visually we're getting a hint of light, which is represented by this image. So this is that, if you'll recall that minor 6 that I mentioned, one of my favorite passages, the E to the C, which breaks up the sequence beforehand. This is what I'm talking about here. So that's the light, the high C that's coming through the clouds. And then this section ends in G major, which is a very solid note on the Baroque Traverso. So I thought to reflect that with a really expansive landscape view, which is represented with this image here. Now, let's go back a bit. So during this one, you'll hear two significant moments where I take rubato. I'll play for you just this passage, this section, in just a bit. So see if you can notice what's happening in the transition between photos and how it works together with my rubato. So the first moment is when you'll see the very first hint of the next photo. And the second moment is when the last remains of this photo disappears and dissolves into the next one. Okay, so it's about what's coming and what's fading away. So I'll play for you the clip now, and I hope you can still see and hear those details, even though the viewing quality might be a little bit compromised through Zoom here. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so hopefully something came through there. And a couple of other interesting details at the very beginning of the piece, when the piece starts. So again, you see this the cloudy Milky Way, right? And you'll notice that the clouds float by very slowly. They're actually individual photos, and there's a very slow transition between each photo. So the clouds are moving very slowly. And then the next time when the Rondeau themes comes back again, there's a series of quick images of moonlit clouds, so really just kind of flashes of photo. So that was my visual solution to represent the longer line of the melody, so that's the slower transition, as well as the individual elements that make up the line, so that's when with the flashing clouds. And also at the very end, if you look carefully, you'll see how the last bits of clouds work together with my rubato. It's very yeah, it's impossible to really describe what it happens, but just, I'll play the clip now, and just notice how the very last distant clouds kind of work and fade together with my rubato and with my sound. And it's very subtle, and I'll be honest to say, I really just had good luck that I had this material and that I was able to work it out this way. Okay, so with all those information in mind, perhaps you'll get a different impression of the piece now, or from some of you, this might be the first time watching it. So this is Trusting Light, and I hope you enjoy it. Oh. Okay, so there you have it. I hope. Oh, sorry, we don't want to start it again. um, I hope it was interesting for you all to see the technical aspects of music and realize that it's nothing more than a way for us to arrive at something much larger, something much more personal and more imaginative. Of course, most probably, Blavet didn't have the night sky in mind, but that shouldn't stop us from coming up with our own stories, our own connections with the music. And so this is my connection, and I encourage you all to find your own, and that's what makes music so exciting. And with that, I actually end my talk here. This is kind of not usual. People who know me, we tend to run over time. So I guess I was very careful about planning my content here. We're actually very good in time, and I'd love to take any questions. I will stop the screen share for now. So, Susan, I think you have your hand up.
I do. Um, I was wondering if you had time today to go over how you would do, what syllables you would use for articulating in the Blavet.
Wow. Well, there's not much articulation. They're all slurs. Yeah. So this is what I was talking about. It's really working with your sound and developing an elastic, flexible sound. Yeah. I mentioned earlier the comparison. Like if we would play it like really dance-like with a much more clipped slurs, that's just something for people to try and compare and to be able to feel the difference. Yeah. So this is basically, yeah, if anything, just the start of the notes just is gentle, uh, do, or you can, two can also work depending on how you work the breath. So using a T doesn't always mean that you'll have a strong or harsh articulation. So it really depends how also you match your breath and work with your air, and also things like range. What notes in specific ranges they kind of react differently.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I had a question about the harmonic structure. I was wondering towards the end, from about the third line from the end, is it sort of B minor? Well, how is it moving there with those G sharps and A sharps, and is that maintained until the repeat?
Yeah, so it's basically you have you know kind of going, it's it's like moving down. You have B minor, and then which the dominant is, then so the next bar is kind of F sharp major, which is the dominant, and then it's just kind of moving downwards. Then we have E major, and then going down into D major dominant, and so it's all just kind of, yeah, basically kind of like stepwise going downwards. Yeah, and it's fun. It's just you feel like you're progressing through all these keys, and it's a great way for us to think about how, okay, so what are some of the characteristics of these notes, of these keys then on the Baroque flute, and how can we demonstrate that? Most in general, though, I would still suggest kind of a basic, a long diminuendo going down, yeah, because it goes then to the second to the last line there, with the, again, that dominant, and then the whole thing starts again. Yeah, so it's definitely feel like you're just kind of floating through all these different keys.
Yeah, exactly. Those lines, that it sort of seems to move faster than the part before. Really, it
Yes.
suddenly speeds up the
Yes, so
harmonic
definitely it's a
changes.
development. Yes, it's definitely, I'm glad you mentioned that. So it's definitely a development section, and that's again, kind of my um, idea of inserting the time-lapse sequence into it because it is a faster it represents a faster motion than in the images.
I thought that might be the idea. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for mentioning that, Corne.
You're welcome.
Any other questions I can answer? Don't be shy. Okay. Oh, yeah. Hi, William.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bill Sherfy in St. Paul, Minnesota in the US.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. I have a question. In the third system, about the third measure, when you were talking about, that nice leap, the C, that octave, suddenly we have those, the way those are, the articulation suddenly changes those couple measures.
You're right.
What about that? That always kind of struck me as interesting.
Yeah. So again, I think that's also a sign for us that something interesting is happening there. It's like all of a sudden, body that's really, that leaping out gesture is more intensified through these kind of 2x2 slurs. And it only happens in that part, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I would say, so that's kind of like a, like if you think about what happened before as kind of longer lines. Of course, there are the individual triplets I was talking about, but in general, it's a more horizontal a gesture. And all of a sudden, you have bum body dadi dum ba da ba. That's something kind of more delicate, almost like lace, where you have a bit more texture. So I would obviously, gently. I still wouldn't like clip them in terms of like stopping the sound with the tongue.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far, but definitely do show that kind of a more gentle tongue to show the groups.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, so just think of a more kind of creating a delicate structure with your air and with the tone.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a nice point. I haven't thought about to talk about the articulation there. Okay, so Susan, you are right in pointing out about the articulation. Thank you. There's so many things I could talk about here, or we could talk about here. Okay.
Maybe, can you hear me?
Hi,
yes?
Stefano. Yes, hello.
Yeah, hi. I see that in from bar 6, 8, 9, 10 to 10, there is a repetition. The same notes are repeated. Okay? There's a sort of the same sentence. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, from 6, the second trio, or maybe also the first one, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. 11 is just the same from to the end.
So are you talking from
the
very
same
beginning?
notes?
Yeah.
Very beginning, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6, and then you go to 11, and to the end is just the same notes. It's a repetition of the same, and I think it's the only place where something is repeated.
Yeah, not quite sure. So let me go back to my, maybe it's easier also. Let me go back to my screen share because there was that slide where I showed the sections.
Yes, you also you show it with a red sign.
Yes.
That part is exactly the same as the bar before. That part.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I usually like to play the first part, let's say, of these two after the first trials. You say trials?
The triplet, yeah.
Triplet, yeah, triplet. There I start a new phrase and do it forte the first time and piano the second time. The second time it's a repetition, and I like to do it softer and something like it's I don't know, it's a repetition, so it's already something I already said. So maybe a little bit quicker, or like not so assertive.
Okay. Yeah.
I like this because it's again, it's a little bit like I don't know, Arabic rhetoric. They often repeat the same sentence twice. You've heard Gaddafi, I don't know, Gaddafi. He repeats just the same sentence twice. It's a kind of rhetoric. And I think the second time, of course, cannot be as the first one. And one solution that I like is to make it stronger and more assertive the first time, and the second time softer and like with nonchalance, like maybe a little quicker or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think you should. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there are many different, permutations or solutions that are possible because through the repetitions and what you decide to do, one way, and then how you decide to do
Yeah.
the second way. I would just be slightly careful about. You had mentioned playing quicker. I'm not sure if you really mean that in terms of tempo, or do you mean maybe just lighter? And kind of moving forward, because obviously we do, like I was talking about, the momentum and the wheel, that there should be a constant motion, and sometimes you can take time and after slowing down and going forward, but so you can do the rubatos, like slowing down and then going forward. Is that what you mean, or do you mean you play everything straight and then all of a sudden it becomes even quicker? I just wanted to clarify.
It's maybe I can make an example, and I say, Teddy, you are a very good flutist. You are a very good flutist. Something like that,
Yeah, okay. So I think, yeah,
so I already
think
said that. So the second time is not so assertive as this first one. You're a good flutist. You're a good flutist.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, there sometimes with these nuances of meanings is very hard, but yeah, I would say, yeah, lighter, kind of maybe more superficial or something, that is just kind of
something like that.
like floating by, but not as solid as the
Yes,
first time.
right,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I see some here in the chat. Any questions in the chat? Okay. I hope the sound was okay for everyone. People are saying sometimes internet problems, but okay. Good. Okay. So if there are no further questions, I will just dash to the very last slide here. So obviously, thank you all so much for spending time with everyone here today. Teddie Talks Traverso continues in 2 weeks' time, where we'll be learning about Telemann's Canonic Sonata in D major. So if you're a modern flutist, please don't be put off by the play along aspect. There will be plenty to learn, and there's plenty to learn for everyone, and the play along is kind of just a way to wrap up each movement. So don't be scared off by the play along. All flutists are welcome in this workshop. I'd also like to draw your attention to a special workshop I'm doing with flutist Amanda Markwig. So people might remember her from our St. Matthew Passion workshop earlier this year. She will be back with us on November 16th, where we'll be talking about J.S. Bach's Magnificat. We feel it's important to get people ready for the Christmas season. So here's your chance to do that. And actually, the early bird sale ends on September 17th, so in just a couple of days, and we want to make sure that you get the deal there, okay? Of course, there are also other events happening along the way. Please subscribe to my newsletter, check out my Eventbrite page, and once again, thank you for being part of our Traverso community. Okay, and with those words, thank you very much, and I hope to see you at another future time. Okay, so all the best for now. Take care, and till then, bye-bye.